Moving on to some developing news this hour. Purdue Pharma, this is the maker of OxyContin, will face charges for their role in the US opioid epidemic. This is according to Justice Department officials. OxyContin, it is a powerful prescription painkiller. Government officials said Purdue Pharma will plead guilty to 3 federal criminal charges as part of a settlement of more than $8 billion. It is the biggest result, I should say, from a US government investigation into the country's opioid crisis, which is linked to nearly 500,000 deaths. While we wait to hear from the Department of Justice, we'll talk to Shihab Ratanzi, our correspondent following this one in Washington, D.C. If this all comes out as we expect, Shihab, this will be a very significant development.
Significant in both sort of a negative and positive way, perhaps you could say. We're just getting the details now from the Department of Justice. $8.34 billion settlement, which will resolve this year-long criminal civil probe by the Justice Department. That $8.34 billion number is relatively symbolic, though, because Purdue Pharma doesn't even have that money. So in the short term, actually, they're likely to pay around $225 million to the government. With the Sackler family, this is the family that owned Purdue Pharma, that made a huge fortune out of selling opioids, a name that you will often see on museums and cultural institutions around the world. They're going to give about $225 million to resolve civil claims. Purdue Pharma pleading guilty to 3 charges, including conspiracy to defraud the U.S., violating federal anti-kickback laws. Basically, what they're admitting to is that they didn't, despite telling the Federal Drug Administration that they had an effective red flag system to avoid the drug being diverted to places where it shouldn't be, they actually didn't have any such thing. Not only that, they were paying doctors to write more prescriptions. They were conspiring to dispense opioids without any legitimate medical purpose, which is thought to have fueled the enormous opioid crisis in the United States. So we're still getting those details, but what's also key is that Purdue Pharma will still exist after this settlement, although as a company held in trust for the benefit of American society, theoretically. That is, there will be a trust board that will decide the interests of the company versus the interests of the American people. But Purdue Pharma itself will still continue researching, selling opioids to the American people.
Shihab, I feel like pretty much anything in the US right now can be viewed through the prism of the election in 2 weeks' time. Can you put this one into that context for us, the idea of the Department of Justice pushing this through now?
Exactly. This was a major Trump campaign promise before he was elected, that he would address the opioid crisis, a particular issue in the hardcore Trump states of the United States, in rural areas, but also, in cities and elsewhere. But this is a way then that if they've come to this conclusion, they can say mission accomplished. Another Trump election promise from the last election has been brought, to fruition. Vote Trump. The problem with all this is partly in what I was saying a moment ago. About 25 states, including D.C. have said, look, we don't want this settlement for various reasons. It lets Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family off too easily. These are, multi-billionaires. They might lose a few, million or dollars here and there. There are criminal charges against the executives who did so much damage to people in the United States. Having Purdue Pharma still exist, even as this kind of public trust, is a little bizarre, they say. That means then that a certain amount of the money from Purdue Pharma will go into mediation efforts, mitigation efforts for opioids. And a lot of attorney generals say they're uncomfortable about selling more OxyContin in order to help people with OxyContin. They don't like that idea. But in the end, this is about accountability. Are the people responsible really being held accountable through all of this, or is this just a few numbers on a spreadsheet and Purdue Pharma just gets away with it?
Shihab Ratanzi with that update from Washington. Thank you, Shihab.